Close to spring in the year 1917, exactly the 6th of March, will be born with the profane human name of Victor Manuel Gomez Rodriguez, the one that will be the bodhisattva of the master Auna Weora, and subsequently Auna Weora, already as a master, on the 27th of October of 1954, will produce himself the magical advent of the Logos Samael, regent of the planet Mars, genie of the Force, and the fifth of the seven, thus the avatar of the new age of Aquarius, of this, the fifth race, of us, the Aryans.
Auna Weora is the human soul, and Samael is the Logos. The Logos incarnated in Auna Weora becomes the venerable master Samael Auna Weora. Let us say that Samael is born there because he is the Maitreya, and the Maitreya comes from the Occident, west. This time he doesn't come from the east, because the Maitreya is not expected sitting down in a lotus position. The images of the Maitreya always represent him sitting down in the Western's way, in a seat, as indicating that he comes from the west. That is to say that the current that he has established comes from the western side of the planet, and that for us has to have an important meaning.
Master Samael also instructs us in his chapter that talks about the transmigration of the soul, where he relates what he lived in a past cosmic day, when he had not yet reached the level of an authentic man. He relates to us his existence as a simple elemental of nature, evolving just enough to reach the level of a humanoid. In other words, an elemental dressed with a human body, but not yet humanized, since he had not created the essential bodies of the being.
Then I was just a wretched intellectual animal, sentenced to living. I had gone from bad to worst, reincarnating, digressing myself from masculine or feminine organisms, according to the cause and effect of karma. I must honestly confess that Mother Nature uselessly worked creating my bodies, which I always destroyed with my passions and vices.
Thus it's useful to keep in mind the chapter about the transmigration of the soul. There Samael relates with that elephant's memory that he has, this ability to go backward, and he cites that in a planet of a past cosmic day, when I had not yet created the astral, mental, and causal body, I was a humanoid, and I lived in a time similar to that of this time. And he began to narrate all that which he lived, and that in the last incarnation of 3,000 cycles, one cycle of 108 existences I lived, I remember perfectly how the last incarnation was, how I degenerated completely, and how spiritual matters did not interest me. Then I fell down backwards in time. In the second death, in the involutive process, I went backwards, and passed through the process as a humanoid, mineraloid, animaloid, and then finally he saw himself into animal figures, and how he took vegetable figures, and finally in mineral form. And then came a time when as a mineral form he did not make an effort to think. He fell in a terrible and boring laziness, and in a total sexual degeneration. He will join any lava that passed through there. It was a terrible thing. Frightening how he narrates that by his own words. Then he went back, till finally the second death came. And as an elemental, he freed himself from that last mineral body. And then again converted into a beautiful elemental creature. The divas checked him. There was nothing. The ego had been destroyed, not by him, by the involution. And then again he was given a new opportunity to again begin the ascendant process through the way of mineral, vegetal, animal, and human evolution. So he also tells that process.
When Samael talks about involution and evolution, it is not that he has read a certain author or looked at the 10th card of the tarot, and there he discovered the existence of evolution and involution. He didn't need to look at a certain image to discover these two laws. No, he wants to tell us he relates what he has lived through his processes, because his esoteric knowledge belongs to what we could understand as an innate occultism, In other words, an esoteric knowledge that he remembers and that he has not forgotten in himself.
Accustomed to swim among the fish, he tells us how, at the beginning, he situated at the head of the pack that was swimming in the deep oceans. He was at the front, and a large fish, a monster, would burst in and eat him. He eventually learned, as he incarnated in animal forms, that he should place himself not at the front, not at the back, in the middle to learn how to move in that world of the animals. And all those experiences he communicates to us as an incredible experience, an experience personally lived. Eventually, he finally attains the body of a humanoid. And finally, he said, I don't want to again end my 108 cycles of existences. I don't want to fall backwards again. I already know the suffering one undergoes involuting.
And then, the soul embryo of Samael decides to start looking for the secret path of self-realization. And this is why the guru appears, the one who will show him the science of how to create an astral body, a mental body, and a causal body, to first obtain the level of an authentic man, which means not to be subject to the 3,000 cycles, each one with its 108 existences. Since it is well known that an authentic man, although not self-realized, as a bodhisattva, is no longer subject to the wheel of life.
In 1917, with the birth of Victor Manuel Gomez Rodriguez, a new and important chapter for humanity begins, which is a preview of what would come 2 years later. Let's find out why this affirmation in the words of Master Samael himself. Really, during the Iron Age, thousands of bodhisattvas fell. Nirvana has time periods of great activity and time periods of inactivity. From February 19, 1919, Nirvana entered into a period of activity, since the end of times are here and we need assistance. At 4 p.m. on February 19th, millions of virgins from Nirvana began to be born. Millions of virgins from Nirvana are reincarnating now to help us. It's amazing to see those virgins reincarnating now as poor women, as humble servants.
Master Samael states that Nirvana, which had been for a period of time closed to humans, opens its gates to humanity in the inner worlds of course, thus entering Nirvana into a period of activity.
It is in the labyrinth of the school of life, the Master tells us in his book, The Three Mountains, how he found again his guru, that Master who in a past cosmic life taught him the ancient path of the razor's edge, the path for obtaining for the third time the philosopher's stone.
Therefore, in this manner, a very important, very secret revolution begins in the heart of Colombia, in that part of Santa Marta where that famous mountain is, and where later the Summum Supremum Sanctuary would be built, and where at the summit are the Mamas, which means enlightened ones. Those Kagi Aborigines who never were conquered by the Europeans, and who remain practically untouchable, virgins, with all their knowledge, with all the wisdom of the serpent, with all the wisdom of the superior dimensions, with an entire Atlantean knowledge.
Samael incarnates in Auna Weora in the year 1954, and practically that October 27th waits for the year to end, and already the next year he heads to Central America. For what we have heard, for what is said, he does that journey from Colombia to Panama, from Panama to Costa Rica, and in each one of these places he founds the Gnostic movement, obviously always through revelation. He will exactly know the mission he has to complete in each of these places. He went by Honduras, Salvador, Guatemala inclusive, until crossing the frontier, and he located not in Mexico City properly, but in Toluca, which is distant enough from Mexico City. The proposal of an avatar is not directly that you self-realize, as a minimum, that you be able to be born, or at least to be able to, by dying, be born, or by being born to die, to become a bodhisattva. In other words, to create a soul, to crystallize a soul, in such a way that you can live 108 existences, 109 existences, 110 existences, 111. In other words, that the opportunities don't be closed for you, which are closed for the humanoid who is not interested in these topics, and that because he runs out of the 108 existences and doesn't have any other remedy than to fall back towards involution, in a first cycle, in a second one, in a third one, a fourth one. 3,000 cycles, which is terrible, without having never aspired self-realization, and have lived 3,000 times the horrors of the inferno, 3,000 times the horrors of involution. Like to say not only to go once to hell, but leaving there to return again. Terrible. Only by thinking about it, one is horrified that it is this way. At least we drink from the glass of forgetfulness and all that is left behind, kept in the unconscious, in the subconscious of the soul. An avatar does not have the intentions of creating a church, a religion, simply to give a wake-up call to our mind in order to awaken our memory, to touch our heart to the sensitivity of returning to the being again. The avatars have the duty of making us remember that there is a cosmic Christ, that there is a Logos, and that all depends on him, and that he is the entrance door to that government, to that celestial Jerusalem, and we should not waste that opportunity.
How wonderful it is to know that we have this being's teachings, and that for that reason it inconveniences, bothers some people that still dream, fantasize with a kind of spirituality, more of a pseudo-type, and they don't understand the graveness of the moments that we live. The teaching of the Logos is vertical, it's radical. One takes it or leaves it. As he used to say, one is never nearer to self-realization than when one is close to the fifth of the seven. One is never closer of falling down into the abyss than when one is next to the fifth of the seven. In other words, in front of Samael you are defined in a line, or you are defined in the other one. Because he comes to define you, he has no need to come to tell you stories. He comes to tell you the things just as they are, and like how they are. He comes to call the things by their own name. And that, of course, inconveniences a great part of humanity, because everybody doesn't like the truth. It puts us in a negative situation. It moves our floor since we have an idea of the truth, and it is that it's not this way. It is that the thing is a lot more serious than what we ourselves imagine. It is very sad to think of how many souls, having either known the teachings or having never heard of them, won't really have the opportunity to touch on or tread this path. No, and I think that in fact it can be that it happens that way for many reasons. Because it's their karma, or because there simply were not the necessary merits. But that us, who have received the blessed grace of being given the gnosis, because it is that, a grace emanated from the Father, we should value immensely the historical moment we are living, and understand that the situation is graver than what we ourselves think, and therefore dedicate all our efforts to cooperate in the great work with our own work as well, with uniting so that all the plans of the White Lodge be carried out.